we're in our fourth major section that I have divvied up. First, it was Genesis 1 to 11. Then it was the patriarchs. Then it was sort of the Exodus, the period of the Exodus. And now we're in another section. We're transitioning. So I'm very excited. I'm going to stop repeating myself a lot. Normally, I repeat myself just so that we can hammer home certain ideas, if that makes sense. Thank you. When you associate a certain section of the Bible with, with these main points, right? That's part of the reason why it's like for 5 meetings in a row, we start, you start hearing the same things over and over again. So anyway, with that being said, now we're in another major section. I'm going to start saying new things. And it's going to be exciting because this section is going to kick off a series of really, really significant events that are overlooked, tend to be overlooked, but not in a way where people don't know that these stories exist. It's that they don't see how they mesh with everything else, right? So what does the book of Joshua have to do with anything other than the fact that this is the story of how they enter into the land? It's foundational. It's foundational to the story. And so, again, we want to sort of contextualize an entire book of the Bible that people sort of don't know what to do with within the broader story of the Bible. Same thing with the story of David and Goliath. How is the story of David and Goliath connected to the story of the book of Joshua? It's immensely connected. And of course, David is the forefather of Jesus. So it all sort of is linked up. It's all connecting. And when we get into the book of Joshua today, hopefully you will begin to see that. Hopefully there will be a lot of things that you didn't know about the book of Joshua that we are going to be talking about today. Sound good? Okay. As I said, I'm just going to jump straight into it. There's a lot to cover today. The era of Moses is now ended. When God told Abraham that his descendants, through whom all the nations would be blessed, all the way back in Genesis chapter 12, if you guys remember all the way back to that meeting. By the way, every meeting is recorded, so you can go back and watch previous recordings if you please. When God told Abraham that his descendants, through whom all the nations would be blessed, would suffer as slaves for 400 years and then return to judge the Amorites, God had in mind what is now about to take place, the culmination of all of the story of the Exodus, which is the book of Joshua. So remember, the point of coming out of slavery was not simply to be free from slavery. It was to be brought in to something else, be brought into somewhere, be brought into a kingdom that God is going to make. In the same way that Genesis was a prequel to the Exodus, you could say, and I know this is how sequence of stories works, but it's really tightly knit in that all of the Exodus was really leading up to this. The Exodus was leading up to the conquering of the land and the coming into the promised land. That's really important when you think about the broader story of the Bible. What is the point of Jesus's first coming? To establish for his second coming, in a sense. What he does to free us when he comes first begins a long march through the wilderness, eventually to be brought into the promised land, right? So can you see how that works out? The Exodus, when we're reading about the plagues and the parting of the Red Sea and stuff like that, you can consider that emblematic of Jesus's first coming, right? The idea of his incarnation, his life, his death, his resurrection. Then when the New Testament is talking about the second coming, it's like we're wandering through the wilderness, and then that second coming is emblematic of this, of Joshua, of coming. Now they've come through the wilderness and now they're coming into the land. They're coming into the promised land. When Christ comes, it's new heavens and new earth. It's new creation. It is the land promised to humanity that they would receive the earth as their inheritance. In the same way that Abraham's descendants were promised the land as their inheritance. Okay? So do you guys see how that sort of is formulating the whole story of the Bible, where we're at right now? Exodus, wilderness, Joshua, okay? So at Sinai, the people of Israel were given the law and entered into the age of the Old Covenant, the Old Testament. Per God's command, they built the dwelling place, the tabernacle, They established the priesthood, and yet because of their faithlessness, they wandered through the wilderness for 40 years. Now in Joshua, the holy war for the promised land officially begins. Last time we talked a lot about the prophecy. Most of last week's meeting, the point of last week's meeting was to talk about the prophetic nature of Deuteronomy, saying, look at all this stuff that happened to you. Here's what my command is for you while you're in the land, but you're not going to follow that command. And I know that you're not going to follow the command, but don't worry. You're going to enter into the land. You're going to be exiled from the land. I'm going to bring you back. So a lot of that Deuteronomy was looking forward to later parts of the Bible. Now we're sort of starting at that beginning point of the story of Israel, entering into the land. And then, like I said, it's going to be sort of a series of unfortunate events. They're going to build a kingdom. They're going to be a priestly nation for a time, in a sense. But then through the series of failures of the kings of Israel, the kings of Judah, they're going to end up in Babylon. We're at that beginning point. So I'm sort of trying to pave the way of understanding for you guys of what really is going to be our next two major sections, which is just going to be the kingdom of Israel, Israel in the land. We had the ancient family of Israel in the patriarchs. We had the people of Israel in slavery, now then in the wilderness, and now they are becoming a kingdom, okay? I've already asked this plenty of times. Who is watching House of David? So the true kingdom of Israel has not completely been formed yet in that, because really that's united under David. But it helps you get a sense of what I'm talking about when I talk about the kingdom of Israel. I actually mean soldiers and, marketplaces and people living in different towns and cities and lords and ladies and, that sort of idea, like these people. That's more of a medieval thing that I just said, but you get the idea. I'm trying to give you the sense of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a civilization. I'm talking about a people that has a whole ecosystem, a whole infrastructure of life, right? That really exists for centuries, okay? That was set up post-Exodus, will fall at the exile. And then the promise of Messiah is that Messiah will restore the kingdom of Israel. And not just the kingdom of Israel, but all of humanity, that the kingdom of Israel stands as sort of a representative on behalf of all of humanity. Okay. So let me introduce Joshua, this book, a little bit, since, like I said, it's at the very beginning of this story. The story of a kingdom that was liberated, that was brought through the wilderness, that was brought into the promised land, that will rise and then will fall. In the same way, Genesis 1-11, the rise of humanity, the fall of humanity, okay? Remember how all the way back in those meetings I said, we were in Genesis 2, I was like, imagine that we're ascending a mountain. And then when we're in Genesis 3, I said, now imagine we're descending the mountain. You know what I mean? Kind of like that's the story of the Old Testament. Or that's the arc of the Old Testament. We're ascending a mountain now, okay? That for the next many meetings, we're going to be ascending a mountain until we get to about Solomon. Once we get to Solomon, it's going to go downhill, okay? Solomon being David's son. So we finished the Torah. Remember, Tanakh is the Old Testament, the acronym of the Old Testament, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. We're in the section known as the prophets now, okay? This is the section by Moses. This is the section by, you could say, the institution of the prophets, the group of the prophets. Go ahead.
You create this class?
Yes. Well, thank you. And then in the grand story of the Bible, I've shown this slide many times. I'll just go over it one more time. And I've already sort of said this today already, but Garden, Genesis 1-11, the ancestors. Then we had the Exodus. Now we're getting into Joshua, and Joshua to Judges is sort of the tumultuous time prior to when the kingdom becomes united under the monarchy, right? The kingly line of Israel, which starts with Saul, but then ultimately becomes the Davidic line. Solomon, and then you have hundreds of years of kings. This is what the book of 1st and 2nd Kings is all about, these hundreds of years of kings, these generations of kings. And then you get to the exile. That's when you get, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, things like that. Why is this all important? Again, when you go into Matthew chapter 1, And this is the genealogy of Jesus. It's covering all of this history just through the names. It's giving you the whole Old Testament. So going into the book of Joshua, remember how important the land is. What's so foundational and fundamental about this land? Care to share? I don't have the full map up, but remember that this is a land bridge, you could say, with the Arabian Desert on the east, the Mediterranean Sea on the west. Africa is down here. Asia, this is the westernmost tip of Asia. So the rest of the continent of Asia here, Europe that way. And that means it's the center of the world. In regards to the movement of people, it's that junction point. Obviously, people can travel by boat and stuff like that. But if you're traveling by land, it's that junction point between 3 continents, okay? It's a fertile land. Sometimes, if you watch biblical media, they falsely portray it very deserty, okay? It's only as deserty as where you're living at right now. Where we're at, actually, geographically, is right on line with the longitude of where the promised land is, okay? Does that make sense? So we actually have the same sort of climate here. And yeah, it's fertile. It's as fertile as the Central Valley of California is. Now, they have to rely on rain a lot, and we'll talk more about this next time. Their water is very scarce, but the whole land itself is immensely fertile. It's the westernmost point of what's known as the Fertile Crescent. Okay, so they're coming into this beautiful land, right? This lush land. On the east, they have just desert. It's just desert. On the west, they have just sea. But you can imagine it as a little zone of harmony in surrounded by chaos, okay? Surrounded by realms of chaos, desert and sea. The overarching biblical themes of Joshua. I'll just say there's probably many more, but the ones that I want to talk to you about today. Number 1, the day of the Lord, the day of Yahweh. This is a repeating pattern throughout the Old Testament. That language hasn't been used yet, the day of the Lord, but it's something that's mentioned by the later prophets. What is the day of the Lord?
Judgment.
Yeah, so most commonly you can associate it with the idea of Judgment Day, the day in which all the goings on of the world, they all get decided upon, that God is coming and bringing to judgment a nation, a people, a person. That Judgment Day, the moment at which all of the events culminate in this mountain peak, where God then comes to render his judgment for right or for wrong.
Is it supposed to come back?
Yeah, day of the Lord. So when the prophets talk about the day of the Lord, oftentimes they could be talking about moments in the past, Sodom and Gomorrah, the book of Joshua. They could be talking about moments in their immediate future. The exile oftentimes is referred to as this day, this great day of the Lord's vengeance, this great day of the Lord's judgment. But they're also talking about it at the end of history. They imagine a day of the Lord that comes at the end of all history, that history culminates in a great judgment day. Does that make sense?
Punishment, though, it's setting things right.
Yeah, judgment involves the weighing of scales, right? Or the balancing of scales, you could say. Judgment involves everything that was done wrong is now visited upon by the Lord. But also, yes, everyone who is in the right or in God's righteousness is vindicated for who they are. Does that make sense? So it's a both and. Yep. Okay, second major theme of the book of Joshua. The book. So again, you talk about the Jesus' second coming, day of the Lord, but that's also going on in the book of Joshua. That idea of Judgment Day. Okay, and with that, the divine warrior, the one sent by God to be the judge. Right. The idea of one who leads the forces of Yahweh to wage war against powers of darkness. And that would be my third major thing, right? The idea of when you read the book of Revelation, for example, and it talks about these great armies and these great battles and, the Battle of Armageddon and things like that. Again, it's sort of tapping into themes that were established in the book of Joshua. Questions, comments, concerns? Keep going? Okay. Now, remember how we talked about this is all the way back in the Cain and Abel story. The difference between the city and the pasture. What are those differences? What's the difference between the city and the pasture in the biblical imagination? I don't have it here.
The city represents not necessarily evil, but Cain and the building humanity,
Right.
building of different structures.
Yeah.
The pasture represents God and natural creation.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that's a great way of talking about it. So what the city represents is it represents corrupted human institution, which in the biblical imagination is founded upon the blood of Abel, right? The first prophet dies and is killed by his brother for his, the fact that he was privileged, over Cain for his offering of faith. We talked all the way, long time ago, we talked about this. And remember how the people of God are always conveyed as people of the pasture, people of the wilderness, people on the fringes of society, people who are out there, herding sheep. They have to rely on the provision of God and not manufacture, right? What you have in cities is you have infrastructure that is supposed to manufacture well-being. A good example of this is, there's one image or metaphor used later on, I think, in the book of Jeremiah that talks about cisterns. What's the difference between a cistern and a well?
The well is a natural tapping into the natural water.
Exactly. Where you gather. Yeah, exactly. And so a cistern, the Jeremiah uses a cistern as an image for talking about us trying to manufacture our well-being. Whereas a well or a spring is a provision by God, right? And so it's that difference between the people of God, they look to God for provision. The people of the city, they manufacture a world of darkness, right? That when we tried to build utopia, we built dystopia, we built Babylon. That sort of sense that Cain built a city, and that city is a culture of blood, a culture of bloodshed, a culture of violence. So this was a slide from all the way back then. Don't get it wrong. Cain's building of a city is not an idealistic turn in the story. It is a reinforcement of the problem. In the ancient world, cities served as protective fortresses against enemies. Cain was sent into the land of wandering by God, but instead he settled down and set up shop. Cain's city thematically is founded upon the blood of Abel. So cities, they represent places where you are sort of fleeing from God's direction, okay, in the Bible. That doesn't mean that they're all bad. Of course, the story of the Bible consecutively is God redeeming the city, or the concept of the city, the concept of human civilization. It's just the idea that human civilization is built upon blood, okay? It's built upon violence. It's an innate critique of human society, the institutions of man. What was God's response to Cain's city and this civilization that he had founded? That's in Genesis 4. What happens in Genesis 6 and 7? It's a big moment. How God responds with, no, the flood. Yes. Yeah, no, that's fine. No, that's okay. So Cain builds a city. The city turns into a civilization of violence. That civilization of violence is thrown down by God in the flood. He brings judgment. The flood represents, therefore, what? The day of the Lord, right? The day of the Lord, okay? So we've already had this story happen, in a sense, of great kingdoms, great cities being thrown down in judgment by God. That already happened back in Genesis 4 through 6 and 7 and 8, okay? With the building of Cain's civilization, the whole Nephilim thing, the flood, okay? So now we kind of are visiting that story again. That was short. That was in a couple chapters of Genesis, in the beginning of Genesis. Now we have a whole book dedicated to the idea of the day of the Lord, of God bringing judgment upon civilizations that are built on violence. He has to break a few eggs to do that. Okay, so he has to bring his people to bear violently, but it's a holy war, and we'll talk more about that. It's the difference between the judgment of God versus humanity, in their own way going after power. Okay, so there's something going on in the books of Joshua and in Judges and in the early parts of First and Second Samuel. There's something going on in the background that most people don't know about. What do you think I'm talking about? Does anyone know about it? What's going on in history at this time, worldwide? Okay, so this is a time of history that historians will call the lead up to and the post, fallout of the Bronze Age collapse. The Bronze Age collapse is an immense moment of ancient history, okay? So invisibly in the background of the books of Joshua all the way through 1st and 2nd Samuel is the post-apocalyptic setting. Think about, like movies that you've seen where it's like the collapse of civilization and there's the Statue of Liberty with its head in the sand, Planet of the Apes, right? The post-apocalyptic setting of a world of complete civilizational collapse. Famously, this moment of history is when the great empires of old, the Hittites, the Amorites, the old Babylonians, and much more, all fell simultaneously within the short span of nearly a century. All at once. Thus, when the Israelites of old looked back on this period that they were born into as a nation, they considered the fact that their kingdom was one risen out of the ashes and ruins of far more ancient ones. That said, in their view, this collapse of civilization was God's judgment upon the evil of humanity, and they were there to pave the way for a new kind of life, a new kingdom built upon the worship of the Most High God. So we would be wrong to imagine that history is a static climb, right? History is not a static climb. History goes like this, okay? Rise and fall of empires. And in the story of the Bible, again, they don't even need to tell you this because they assume you know this, that what's going on in the book, like why is the book of Judges so chaotic and lawless? It's because it's like the Wild West. It truly is. You have had now the fall of empires. Imagine the US, China, Russia, all of these civilizations collapsing at once, at one time. Okay? That's the world that they're living in. Just after the book of Joshua. Okay? One might be able to argue that maybe Joshua had something to do with this, right? But the idea here is that literally we have the collapse of civilization in this period. So Joshua and the Israelites are coming to bring judgment upon these kingdoms in the land of Canaan, the Levant, which is a linchpin of all these other nations. And then right after that, you have a plunge of human society, a fall of empires. And so what you have then in the Israelite imagination is a cyclical nature of history. That you have the building up of civilizations and then the fall of civilizations, that God brings judgment upon these great cities, these great kingdoms. And that Israel, in this case, again, there's a sense in which they think we have something to do with this. That we threw down these nations, right? That we brought down these lords, that we brought down these princes of society. We brought down the old world. God used us as his instrument of judgment to bring down the world and start anew, okay? To tear down the old system and to start a fresh one. Now, something with that, what's very interesting, and this is a sidebar, so something, in another part of the world, again, like I said, this was a civilizational collapse on the scale of all of human civilization. There is one particular city that falls in the Bronze Age collapse that also gives birth to two key players that we're going to be dealing with later on in the biblical story. And what I'm talking about is the fall of Troy and the Trojan War, which gives birth to, the ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks. They saw their history as going back to the Bronze Age collapse as well. the moment in which great Troy fell, right? Does that make sense? I don't know if you know that much about that, but when we get into the New Testament, that'll be really important, okay, as we're dealing with the Roman Empire, because you can imagine that the story of the Bible is leading up to this moment as Israel grows in maturity out of the Bronze Age collapse, but also the Roman Empire grows into maturity out of the Bronze Age collapse, okay? Again, it's hard for us to imagine a time because we think of them as all in some sort of nebulous ancient past. But they're living in a time where there are ruins for them, right? So we go to the ancient world and we find ruins. But they also have ruins. They also have these buildings and these fortresses that were of the great kings of old that no one goes to anymore. Has anyone heard it said that Cleopatra is closer to us than she was to the building of the Great Pyramids in time? So think about that. The pyramids to Cleopatra were ancient. They're ancient to us. To her, they were also ancient, and she's ancient to us. That's how history actually works, okay? And so, again, when you have the book of Joshua, when you have the period of the Judges, they're living in a dystopian, post-apocalyptic, the old world, it fell. It went down, okay? And now there's a building back up again. Now, there's a myriad of reasons for why we have these empires fall in the Bronze Age collapse. It's not necessarily the book of Joshua that is the reason for that. I'm just saying the book of Joshua is taking place within the broader context of the fall of the old world, which resembles a kind of flood. Again, think about this, that in the biblical imagination, if you're an ancient person living in the time of the kings of Israel, you think about the fact that you're a civilization that was born out of a fall of civilization. That fall, that civilization that just fell, came out of the fall of civilization that happened much earlier in the flood. Before the flood, there was an even more ancient civilization. You see what I'm saying? That there are these layers and cycles of history. That empires rise, God brings judgment, there's a fall. Empires rise, God brings judgment, there's a fall. And again, in the biblical imagination, that is the story of all of history. That empires rise to the end of history when God brings an end to them all, like a layer cake almost. And that's why, also in the biblical imagination, all of the cities are sort of one thing, right? So in the book of Revelation, when John says, when he uses Babylon, he's using the word Babylon a lot to describe this evil empire, this evil city. But then he says that Babylon is also Egypt, is also Sodom, is also Rome, is also corrupt Jerusalem. He refers to all of these cities like within the same paragraph as though they're one thing, okay? And so again, when we're talking, that's sort of that layer cake that I'm talking about, right? That civilizations rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall, and then God brings judgment on all of them. That's why in the book of Hebrews, when it says that Abraham was waiting for the city built by God himself, that is actually, if you guys know the Hall of Faith chapter of Hebrews, that's the starting point of that moment at which the writer of Hebrews goes through all of these different figures of the Old Testament, said they were looking forward to something, they were looking forward to something, they were waiting for something, they were putting their faith in something. They were putting their faith in the fact that God would deliver true civilization, true humanity, that God would bring about a true kingdom, not a kingdom that is just built by human hands that's going to rise and fall and judgment is just going to come upon it, but a civilization built by God himself, okay? If you're in this room, you're living in that kingdom. You're living in that civilization, okay? You kind of sing the story. When you think about the book of Joshua, think about the destruction of the old world, the establishment of a new world, the death of the old, the birth of the new. That's what's going on in the book of Joshua. Why does this kingdom need to fall? Why do these civilizations need to be taken out?
They didn't know what they were doing to sacrificing children and all.
Okay, good. So the biblical writer, the prophet, is going to use child sacrifice as the central image or the locus point for what it means to have a depraved society. Okay. You could say human sacrifice in general, but child sacrifice being popular as well.
Why were they sacrificing children?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's so much to say about that. A lot of cultures have sacrificed their children in history. It wasn't just the people in ancient Canaan. I'm not talking about the Israelites. I'm talking about the people that the Israelites are coming to conquer. The people that Israel is coming to conquer, the Bible talks about them as being so depraved that they even sacrificed their own children, right, to Molech, to the god Molech and other things. Why sacrifice your children? Can I even answer that question? I'll try my best to answer that question. Sacrifice is, in the pagan sense, is what you bribe the gods with. Okay? So if I want to get something out of my life, I need to bribe the powers that be. I need to pay my dues, and then they will bless me. The god of the river, the god of storms, the god of fertility, whatever. What is a greater sacrifice than me sacrificing the future for the present? Children represent the future. They represent the, prosperity, right? And posterity, that we have generations to come. But I need my stuff now. I need what I need now. So if I sacrifice my child, this thing that, my wife labored through, and we, went through all of this work to produce this thing, if I give that up to the gods, then surely I'll be blessed.
Kind of like Jacob and Esau.
Yeah, with the stew.
The legacy.
For them now. That's a good, really good connection, actually. That's why it's so poignant when Abraham is commanded to sacrifice his child by the Most High God. And then God says, actually, the point is that I'm showing you that I'm not that God, right? He says, stop, don't do that. I'm providing a sacrifice. I'm providing a ram. I'm providing a substitute. This is all pointing to Jesus, of course. Okay, but it's a great question. Why sacrifice children? It's hard, again, why you have cultures that eat each other, like literally you have cannibalistic cultures, right? So this is what we mean by demonically ruled, depraved civilizations. The ancient Aztecs. Who's seen like Apocalypse Now? No, it's not that one. Oh, Apocalypto. Yeah, that's right. I've not seen that movie, but I know about it. You've seen it? Yeah. So, does that answer your question? Well, the short answer, the Bible views these depraved practices as being instigated by depraved, dark spiritual forces. Okay? That twist humanity's nature in on itself, corrupt it to do all kinds of crazy things. And really, this might be worth just staying on this point for a little bit. Since we're going to be talking about violence, we're going to be talking about God sending people to go, slaughter these civilizations that do this sort of thing to take them out. Within the way that the Bible is looking at the world, we're all designed with purposes. It's not meaningless, how we're made, right? And how things work in the world. And so if I am living in a culture where cannibalism is a normal thing, and I'm eating human flesh, sorry for it to get dark, this is a real thing. Or if I take my child and I cut its head off or cut it in half and then burn its body, you can see how just don't even think about it, in a faith or theological sense, just in a naturalistic sense.
That's just their normal. They don't know any better.
Well, I'm saying they should know better. It's not normal in the sense that they have to be in their mind corrupted to believe that this is something that they need to do, because the causality of reality, why would you give birth to something and then kill it? Why would you eat that which is making up your own body? Like, okay, when you eat, what you eat becomes your body, right? So why would you eat a human body to make up your own body? You see what I'm saying? It's sort of like incest. It distorts natural reality, okay? Natural law, you could say. Abortion is another one, yeah. Yeah, so abortion would be a modern child sacrifice. Why do people abort? For the present.
And then further, it's gotten to the point where we've actually, states have had to pass laws in the last few years to protect born alive babies.
Right, right. Well, infanticide, the killing of born babies. So in ancient Rome, it was common for, if you didn't want to, I mean, wait, hang on. This is common today in modern India. If you don't want a baby, you put it on the road and you walk away. Yes, that's a thing.
As of today, they do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you just have to ask yourself, why do they do that? That's a child sacrifice right there. You know? Does it make sense, guys? I know that it's hard to talk about, but it's important that we frame this concept in our brain, okay? That what's going on in the book of Joshua, the way that it's telling the story, y'all get really excited when Luke Skywalker blows up the Death Star. A lot of people died on that Death Star, okay? Y'all get really excited and happy. Y'all get really excited when the Avengers take out Thanos, when Iron Man snaps his finger and they all turn to dust, right? They were people too, guys. Or, of course, when the orcs are, taken over by the Riders of Rohirrim in Lord of the Rings. This is what we all get hyped up by Holy War. Because we truly believe in good and evil. Even if we live in a modern culture that is all so relativistic, morally relative, we actually do believe in good and evil. You're shocked when I say that people leave their children into the ditches in the streets, Something needs to be done about that, right? Is the concept.
Just real quick, why do they do that? I mean, just they're evil. I mean, but they expect somebody else to pick it up.
No, it's just die by exposure.
And that's to appease the gods.
No, in that case, it's just purely carnal. I just don't want the baby.
Just don't want the baby.
Yeah.
Too many or whatever.
Yeah. So this is actually interesting. An aside. 2 minutes. An aside. The early church is reported as having gone to save the babies out of the ditches, right? Sorry. Yeah, the people who in that sense adopted unwanted children and stuff like that. So we were, if you read about reports of the earliest Christians, it's like they're the ones that go out to the ditches to pull the babies out of the ditches. There are also rumors that go around that say that, Christians eat flesh and blood. Communion. They're eating the babies. Aren't they eating the babies? They're taking the babies out of the ditches and they're eating flesh and blood. They're eating the babies. I'm not even making that up. Like, that's an actual ancient rumor, right? Where they take these two, things that they've heard about the Christians and then they connect the dots, conspiracy theory, So I'm not joking, guys. I didn't make that up. Okay, but that's all an aside. You guys understand what I'm getting at here, okay? The idea of why is God bringing judgment upon nations? It's because they are depraved, right? It's because he has a vision for humanity. He has a design for humanity. And the old system needs to go. They need to purge the land of its spirits. They need to get rid of what makes up this culture of depravity. We sort of, again, struggle with that because we live in a culture that prides itself on moral relativism. And we think this thing called ethnocentrism is can apply to a situation like this. Some cultures are better than others. That's just true. Some cultures are built on death, cannibalism, child sacrifice. Okay? It's okay to say that. But that's wrong. Okay?
It's kind of an obvious thing here, but these are stories, these are fiction.
Mhm.
But the reason that we cheer for that fiction is because we're made in the image of God.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Because that heart is in us for good versus evil.
Yeah. We want to see the good prevail. We want to see justice done. We want the bad guys to get theirs. We want it to happen, okay? And that's the promise of Scripture, right? Is that God is going to deliver on his promise to bring judgment, right? To vindicate the righteous and to bring judgment upon the wicked, okay?
It reminds me of the scripture that says that the enemy will come to kill, steal, and destroy.
Yeah.
God come to give life.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. But the idea here is that the land needs to go through a cleaning, a cleansing, right? And the spirit, again, the spirits, that's the best way of thinking about it. The spirits that have instigated this, they need to be driven out. Let's keep going. We have a lot to get through. These are recap slides from the flood. So the morality of divine judgment. Remember that God's judgment equals his justice, each equals his mercy, equals his love, right? To have justice on someone from God, for God to have justice on someone, that means he has to be having mercy on someone else. If there is someone attacking Nate and God comes to or sends someone to stop the person attacking Nate, it's simultaneously justice on the person attacking Nate as it is mercy on Nate. And all of it equals the love of God to do right. You know what I mean? That God's nature is love and righteousness. So in the Bible, God's judgment always is equal to his justice, equal to his mercy, equal to his love. Being all good, God always judges justly. Being all loving, God's justice is always merciful, providing rebellious creatures countless opportunities to repent and choose life. You cannot have an all-loving God who does not also love justice. Justice, as we said, again, is the balancing of scales, right? So this is something that you might hear. Why doesn't God do something about evil? Simultaneously, you might hear, how can God be so judgmental and harsh? There's an incoherency between these two statements. Some people tend to find it easy to notice all the suffering in the world that seemingly goes unaccounted for and all the wrongdoers that seem to get away from things. But then we criticize God when he takes action. While we are quick to ask why God allows bad things to happen, we often can act morally superior when we find examples in the Bible of God taking direct action. We fail to remember that God's ways are higher than our ways. God is the giver of life. Anytime someone dies, God allows it to happen. We shouldn't act as though there's something crazy about the conquest of the Promised Land when anyone who has ever died in history has died in a way ordained by God. That's wild, right? That he had let it happen. That doesn't mean he wants people to die. It just means that life is contingent upon him, okay? And so when people die in his name, in this book of the Bible, it's God's prerogative to take away life, okay? The life that he gave. But of course, this all points forward to the day of the Lord, which is first foreshadowed in the flood. Then we have it here in Joshua. Spoken of throughout the Bible is the final day in which the creator of all things repays each according to what they have done. On this day, those who have confessed Christ as king by faith are no longer under the curse of their sin. Instead, the righteousness of Jesus is counted as their own. On this day, victims of history receive repayment, and the wicked, both human and spiritual, receive full repayment for their evil. This idea of justice, of the balancing of the scales, okay? I want to continue on this line, though, as we continue to talk about Joshua in particular. So the conquest wars of Canaan, you have to understand, are described in a literary style that is intentionally hyperbolic. While the description of the conquest of Canaan sounds uniquely violent to our modern ears, it is not uniquely violent within its context. It's quite tame compared to other war texts where they say, and then we brought out the king and we skinned him alive and then raped his wife in front of him and then chopped off his head. When it says that Joshua brought out the 5 kings and had the leaders step on the neck and then hung them on a tree, that's quite tame in comparison to what I just said, okay? Just think about that, okay? The world is a violent place, and the Bible has some violence in it, and you just have to be able to swallow that. You love going to the movies and see it, but then when you get to the Bible, you're just like, come on, this is not good, okay? No, we have to understand that the world is violence, and this is a thing of history, okay? So I don't need to continue reading that. The conquest is described in different ways depending on who the Israelites are fighting with against in a given context. This is really important. The amount of times that I've heard in my life that Israel committed a genocide is astounding, okay? I don't know why people say that when you actually have people in the text that are able to be spared and put on the side of Israel. Rahab, the Gibeonites. This happens, okay? That a genocide is this sort of needless slaying of an entire people group, not in a holy war, but just we don't like these people, so we're taking them out. Right? That's not what's going on here. That's not the perspective that the Bible is giving at all. The perspective of that the Bible is giving is we need to tear down an entire kingdom. We need to drive out the culture, right? Because it is a culture of death. And if you want to become an Israelite, you can become an Israelite.
Yeah.
Okay? That's important. Again, the Gibeonites, Rahab and her family, these examples where people who choose to side with Israel, they're allowed to side with Israel. Okay? The severity of God's judgment is consistent with the severity of sin and darkness in the land. So we've talked about this already, but the idea of these satanic practices, there's a severe response by God, right? That severity is, as I said, tear down everything, destroy everything, devote everything to destruction. The point here is, if you leave the like with weed whacking or something like that, like you need to poison the soil a little bit if you don't want weeds to come back, right? You need to be extra particular. You need to again, as I said, drive out the spirits, right? It's sort of the idea, this is a modern hopefully application that makes sense. This is just coming to me. But the fact is, like, the institution of Nazi Germany doesn't exist anymore. That institution doesn't exist. But every time we see a swastika, you know what I mean? We're just like, that needs to be shoved. That needs to go away. That needs to stay in the closet. That we're not bringing that back out again. It's because it represents a spirit of an institution. And that's kind of what they're talking about when they say, throw down the altars, destroy the idols. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. The conquest of Canaan was ordered and ordained by the creator of all things, who by his nature cannot lie, cannot be unjust, and cannot do wrong. While the conquest of Canaan is definitely a violent part of the story of the Bible, with a lot of bloodshed, it ultimately is an important part of a larger plan to save all life and reconcile humanity to the creator. The idea here is that, yes, this is a violent part of the story, but it's situated within a larger story of the salvation of all humanity and all the world. Again, just because we have a bloody battle, just because Iron Man had to snap his fingers and take out the Thanos' army, doesn't mean that it's not within the context of the preservation of life for the long term. Okay, you have to prune a tree for it to grow. Okay, think about that imagery. God has to cut away for new life to come. And so this is why the word in the Bible that is used to describe these ultimate destructions is harem, okay? Ban, utterly destroy, right? So when God says completely devote to destruction, he's talking about cut it back, throw it into the fire, leave nothing there, completely destroy this old world so that we can start afresh. It's kind of like the flood. Okay, I just wanted to give all of that, since it is a secular polemic oftentimes that you hear from new atheist types or what have you, or even, other groups, that the Bible, that somehow the book of Joshua is a stain on the Bible. They just don't see the whole picture. They just really don't, okay? Is anyone here wrestling with that? Or are we all understanding the points? Feel good? Okay. Good? Awesome? Okay. I feel like I've been talking a lot, so I want to make sure that I offer opportunities for reflection. Okay, now that I've sort of harped on that for a while, so I'm going to continue. Does that sound good? Joshua, as a person. It is unfortunate that many seem to overlook the extreme importance of Joshua when it comes to the story of the Bible. Not only is Joshua a type of Christ, being a holy warrior, leader of Israel who wages war, executes judgment upon the nations, but Joshua is the only other major figure of the Bible who shares his name with the Messiah. So Moses foreshadowed Messiah Jesus as Israel's intercessor, prophet, and teacher. Joseph now shadows Jesus as military commander and conqueror, the one who wages war on behalf of God's people. So his name is Yehoshua. Yahweh saves, the Hebrew rendering of the English name Joshua, the name of the shepherd of Israel following Moses, who led Israel in the conquest of the promised land to clear the way for the dwelling presence of Yahweh. The warrior, the one who wields a sword on behalf of his people. Now, again, Jesus doesn't pick up a sword. Those who live by the sword die by the sword, as he says. But it also does say that he has a sword. But the sword comes from his mouth. It means that he's God, that he is able to wield speech creatively. You know what I mean? That God says and things happen. He can separate light from darkness by a word, right? In the same way that a sword can cut things in two. And so just something to think about. But remember, the name Joshua is the name of Jesus. Okay? Jesus is just a transliteration between different languages. But if you were really going to say the name of Jesus in its original tongue, it would be a shortened form of Yehoshua. It would be Yeshua. Okay? So when the angel Gabriel comes to Joseph and to Mary and says, your son is going to be named what? Joshua. The name of the leader who conquered the land. Okay? So that should really stick in your mind as Joshua. Man, Joshua is an important figure. This is the one emblematic of Jesus, the one who comes to conquer and clear the way, pave the way on behalf of his people following behind him. Okay? So Joshua, you can think of Joshua as representing Christ, right? This warrior, this divine warrior, and the warriors who trail behind him as us. When you read the book of Joshua, you can read it in a symbolic way, in the idea of our leader leading us into the promised land, carving the path, okay? We're trailing behind him. Remember, since the killing of Abel in Genesis chapter 4, God has explicitly communicated his desire for humanity to be free from the stain of violence. In the 21st century, we may tend to get squeamish when it comes to depictions of ancient war and bloodshed. Yet if the book of Joshua is to subvert any of our modern sensibilities at all, it would be by teaching us that God is not squeamish to grant evil what it is due, the full penalty of divine punishment. In the end, the Bible says violence and war will be forever abolished and no more. Okay, that was a lot of preface. We have an hour left to actually do the reading. You guys ready? Okay. We're flying through. Hopefully it's not too much. So Joshua chapter 1, verse 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving them, to the people of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon you I have given to you, just as I promised to Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, and all the land of the Hittites to the great sea toward the going down of the sun shall be your territory. So he just said that's a visual literary map. Yep, go ahead.
Are you always going to be reading from the ESV?
I don't have to. Why? Oh yeah, ESV is a good translation. Which one do you have? The NLT? NIV. NIV is good too. Yeah. If there are differences and you feel that is like a challenge or complicated, then just shout it out and we can explain through. It's just different translations. Yeah, so the root is the same. Verse 5. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong. This is the important point of this chapter. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law of Moses that my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. The book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So now Joshua is going to assume his command of the people of Israel, and this command of God primarily, be strong and courageous. You have walked in this history of People, a whole generation of people getting too scared to do what you're about to do. Now you have had a whole generation that has been raised up in the wilderness, that has been raised up to know. Imagine you're growing up in the wilderness in ancient Israel, and you're just being told that, like, okay, when you're a fighting age, you know what's going to happen. You're about to go take out those giants, right? And that's now about to happen. And God is commanding Joshua to be stalwart, right? Be strong and courageous. You're going to take the land. If you just listen to my voice, be still, I will fight for you. Okay? This is going to be really important in a chapter for us to recognize that God himself is the one who is fighting on behalf of the people of Israel. It's not them just in their own strength able to do it. It's that God is giving them the victory. Okay? We're going to skip over chapter 2. We're going to go back to the story of Rahab. We're going to go straight to chapter 5. Okay? So chapter 5. We'll go back to chapter 2 in a moment. So do chapter, what did I say?
5.
I meant let's go to chapter 3 and then to 5. Okay? 3 to 5. My apologies.
Crossing the Jordan.
Yeah, crossing the Jordan. So remember, the Jordan River is on the east side of this land. It sort of marks the territory boundary of this promised land. It's a river that runs the entire length of the promised land. Okay? And so they're going to cross from the east to the west over the river, or through the river. Verse 1 of chapter 3. Then Joshua arose early in the morning, and they set out from Shittim, and they came to the Jordan, he and all the people of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. At the end of 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, as soon as you see the ark of the covenant of Yahweh your God being carried by the Levitical priests, then you shall set out from your place and follow it. Yet there shall be a distance between you and it, about 2,000 cubits in length. Do not come near it, in order that you may know the way that you shall go, for you have not passed this way before. Then Joshua said to the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And Joshua said to the priests, take the ark of the covenant and pass on before the people. So they took the ark of the covenant and went before the people. The Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. And as for you, command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, when you come to the brink of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan. And Joshua said to the people of Israel, come here and listen to the words of Yahweh your God. And Joshua said, here is how you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is passing over before you into the Jordan. Now therefore take 12 men from the tribes of Israel, from each tribe a man. And when the soles of your feet of the priests bearing the ark of the Lord of all the Lord of all the earth shall rest in the waters of the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from flowing, and the waters coming down from above shall stand up in one heap. I'll just stop reading there. So what is he saying? He's saying that the Lord is going to go before you through the Jordan, carried by the priests, and the Jordan is just like the Red Sea, going to be split in two. It actually will mention the Red Sea. It'll say, just like the Red Sea, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen here now that you've been brought through the wilderness. We're going to do this parting the waters and passing through the waters again. Something I just noticed while we were reading, it's interesting. The Ark of the Covenant goes into the waters of the Jordan, and then the people follow, right? Jesus gets baptized in the Jordan, and then the people follow, okay? So just a little connection there. But he sets up these 12 memorial stones. Go to verse 10 of chapter 4, okay? Verse 10 of chapter 4. For the priests bearing the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished that the Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people, according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. The people passed over in haste, and when the people had finished passing over, the ark of the Lord and the priest passed over before the people. And so what? Sorry, hang on. This is verse 15 now. Go to verse 15. And Yahweh said to Joshua, command the priests bearing the ark of the testimony to come up out of the Jordan. So Joshua commanded the priests, come up out of the Jordan. And when the priests bearing the ark of the covenant came up out of the midst of the Jordan, the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up on the dry ground, and the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed all the banks as before. By the way, this is something I didn't mention, but at this time in the season of the year, the Jordan, it communicates, is overflowing with water, right? So if you go to the Jordan today, it's not that big a river, but at different times, obviously rivers, they grow in size. And in this time, the idea is that it's overflowing all the banks. It's a pretty high river. So again, it's another sort of miraculous moment that you have an entire nation of people pass through a river on dry ground. Okay. Why is this important? I'm going to go back to the slides for a second. So remember, passing through the waters, the central pattern of the Bible, right? That waters represent death. They represent the realm of chaos. And in order to pass through, or the waters to be separated, to create dry land so that you can live and pass through, is the central miracle of the Bible. A wind of God swept over the waters. God separated the waters from above, the waters from below. The dry land appeared, right? That's the creation narrative of Genesis 1. Exodus 14, the Lord drove back the sea by a strong east wind, turned the sea into dry land. The waters were divided, and then the people pass through. Now we have that happening again as they enter into the promised land. So when those who bore the ark had come to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the ark dipped into the edge of the waters stood still, and they were cut off, right? The idea of passing through the waters as representing baptism, okay? Particularly important here in the Jordan. So when Jesus says, you shall not see the kingdom of God unless you're born of the water and of the Spirit. Of course, he's hearkening back to Genesis chapter 1. It's the passages that I just went over. The Spirit of God sweeping over the face of the waters, the wind of God's, parting the waters. Whenever the waters are parted, the Spirit of God is coming to part them, right? Is the idea. And same thing is going on here in the Jordan. Now, why is the Jordan important? Of course, this is where John the Baptist does his baptizing. When he establishes the baptism movement. Baptism, by the way, just means immersion into water. Okay. So when he is baptizing, he's baptizing in the Jordan River. This is where Jesus comes to be baptized. So what happens at the Jordan? Israel is created as a nation, right? The birth of a nation at the Jordan, okay? The entering into the promised land at the Jordan. So why is it that John the Baptist goes back to the Jordan? And he says, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is here, is at hand, is coming. It's because he's recapitulating, he's redoing what we're looking at right now. What John the Baptist sees himself as doing is he's going back to where this happened, where originally Israel was established, and said, we're doing it over again. But now the real time, right? Now the real deal. It's happening here. Something else really important happens at the Jordan, which we can't get into today, at the same spot. By the way, this is a spot you can go to today. It's pretty awesome. Okay. So what is the Jordan? The parting of the waters and the Jordan represents? It represents that moment at which you do now have the fulfillment of the people of Israel being created as a nation. What John the Baptist does when he goes and baptizes in the Jordan is he's saying, we're going back to this. Okay. We're starting over again. This is the new Israel, restoring the people of God after the exile. Okay. All right. Go back to the reading now. In chapter 5, there's one more thing that I want to read for you, starting at verse 10. Okay, chapter 5, verse 10. So after they cross into the Jordan and cross through the Jordan, then they're going to celebrate the Passover. Well, they're going to do more than that. The whole generation needs to be circumcised. So just a little note. But because none of them, it's a whole new generation. Anyway, it's beside the point. I'm just telling you what's in the Bible. And then verse 10, they celebrate Passover, right? So while the people of Israel were encamped at Gilgal, they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month in the evening on the plains of Jericho. And the day after the Passover, on that very day, they ate the produce of the land, unleavened cakes and parched grain. And the manna ceased the day after they ate the produce of the land, and there was no longer manna for the people of Israel. They ate the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. I want you to just think about this. This is very interesting, okay? They're celebrating the Passover. What is the Passover?
That's when they painted the sacrificial lamb and the blood on the cross and all the firstborns.
Yep. Okay, so they take the blood of the sacrifice, the perfect lamb, they paint it on the door. The angel of death will pass over them. What does that represent? The blood of Jesus, Christ's perfect blood, he being the lamb. Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, Jesus, okay? All right, so now we jump to verse 13. Keep the context of the Passover in your brain as we read this next part, okay? When Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing before him with his drawn sword in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said, "Are you with us, or are you for our adversaries?" So Joshua sees, is it just a man? Right? No. Okay. And this man says, "No." I love this verse so much. It's so good. Are you on my side or on their side?
No.
No. But I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and said to him, "What does my Lord say to his servant?" And the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, "Take off your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did so. Okay.
Yeah, just like I said, Moses
Mm-hmm.
went to the
Burning bush, yeah. And, if you fall on your feet before an angel, what does the angel tell you to do?
Yeah.
Get up. Right? So just something to think about, okay? Who is this man, right? The commander of the Lord's army. Okay, and remember the context of the Passover, okay? The Passover was just celebrated. So God said to Moses, he said in Exodus chapter 23, "Behold, I am sending an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you into the place that I have prepared. Watch for him and listen to his voice. Do not rebel against him, because he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him." My name is in him. So who might we be talking about?
Jesus.
Okay, so the encounter with the divine warrior. Joshua stands before the one who is his divine mirror, right? If you're joining us for the first time, what is the angel of the Lord? Better translation, messenger of Yahweh.
Jesus.
Okay, so remember, angel does not mean species, it means role. Okay, functional role of a messenger. Okay, so again, that text did not use the word angel, but you do have who visits Moses in the burning bush that says, "Take off your feet, for the ground is, you're standing on holy ground." Who says that?
God.
God says that. God is the one who visits Moses in the burning bush. But what does the text say is in the burning bush? The angel, the messenger of Yahweh, right? This is getting a little bit into the doctrine of the Trinity, but remember the times in which God appears before a person. It's what we call a Christophany, an appearance of the Most High God as a man. That's the Son, okay? That's the second member of the Trinity known as the Son. Very, very rich Old Testament uses of Trinitarian doctrine is when you find appearances of Yahweh on the earth in the messenger of the Lord, or in this figure, the commander of the Lord's armies and things like that. Why is this also important within this greater context of the story? Again, we have the Passover was just celebrated. Jesus is the Lamb.
He is the Lamb.
He is the Lamb, right? Then you have God as a man standing before who? The person incarnate God will share his name with, right? His mirror. Think about how Joshua is standing before the person that he's typifying, right? The person that he's shadowing. Isn't that really cool? Joshua, like the commander of the Lord's armies, God as a man on earth is like, "I'm going to share your name one day," right? And what's even cooler the commander of the Lord's armies, my great grandmother is in that city of Jericho right over there, Rahab. How cool is that moment? Passover, commander of the Lord's armies, angel of the Lord, Joshua, who represents Christ, and Rahab is right over there, who is, again, found in Matthew chapter 1 within the line of Jesus, okay? This member of Jericho, this citizen of Jericho. Isn't that really cool? What chapter are we in again? Joshua chapter 5. You come to the end of Joshua chapter 5, and it's just like, it has like a whole web of connections that just go all in every which direction, and it's all centered around Jesus. Kind of mind-blowing. Yeah.
That is. I didn't put all that together.
So, yeah. So again, you have the angel of the Lord standing there with a drawn sword in his hand, and Joshua, who represents him. The Passover was just sacrificed. And again, Jesus is going to be born of Mary, whose great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother is Rahab. Okay? Who's right over there in the city of Jericho. Okay? Pretty freaking cool. Okay? But this is important. He says, I have now come, and I'm not really on your side, Israel, like in a fleshy sense. It's not about you against them. It's about God bringing judgment. It's not petty warfare. God is bringing judgment, which means every battle that is being fought, it's not just about simple, like I said, warfare. It's about God is the one who is vanquishing these giant clans. God is the one who is bringing his justice, okay? So the conquest of Canaan is not simply Israel's war against the Canaanites. It is just one part of the Creator's holy war against the old kingdom of darkness, okay?
Because they're still practicing bad stuff.
Exactly. And so, yeah, that is important for you to have that in your mind, okay?
Is that why Rahab told the two that came to seek it out? Then she said that she knew that this land belonged to God.
Right. So what's really cool about Rahab as a figure is she's brought up in, again, that hall of faith of Hebrews chapter 11. When, again, the whole context of that chapter is Abraham looked forward to the city of God. This person looked forward to God, bringing forth his kingdom. And it says the same of Rahab, right? Rahab is living as a cult prostitute within the old system. But she sees, you could say spiritually sees, what's coming. A new kingdom. A kingdom that is instituted by God himself, right? So that's the faith that it conveys that Rahab has, okay? That she's not going to go kicking and screaming. She's going to come into the fold, right, of the people of God. So let's go to her chapter. Go back to Jericho chapter 2 now. Okay? Josh, did I say Jericho? Gosh. There's a lot of I'm saying a lot of things today, guys.
We get it.
Yeah. Okay, so this is before they crossed into the Jordan. So we went back in time a little bit, but I just wanted to sort of give you guys things in a specific order. Starting at verse 1. And Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men secretly into Shittim, from Shittim as spies, saying, Go view the land, especially Jericho. And they went and came to the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, Behold, the men of Israel have come here tonight to search the land. The king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them, and she said, True, the men came to me, but I do not know where they are from. When the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out, and I do not know where they went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them with the stalks of flax that she had laid out on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords. The gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. Before the men lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to them, I know that Yahweh has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how Yahweh dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens and on the earth beneath. Now then, please swear to me by Yahweh your God that I have dealt kindly with you, so that you will deal kindly with my father's house. Give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. Okay, so she's willing to throw her weight with them, right? And she's willing to bet on them. And she recognizes that only the true God can throw down King Og of Bashan. Only the true God could throw down Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Of course he's going to throw down Jericho. Of course he's the most powerful God. So why wouldn't I get behind him? Why wouldn't I put my life into his hands? Why would I try to keep striving and struggling against God, right? When he is overtaking. And she asks for a sign. She asks for a sign. The men, this is verse 14. The men said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell us this business of ours, then when the Lord gives you this land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you. She let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was built into the city wall. She lived in the wall. And she said to them, go into the hills, pursuers encounter you, and hide there 3 days until the pursuers have returned. Afterwards you may go your way. The men said to her, we will be guiltless and respect this oath of yours that you have made us swear. Behold, when we come into the land, you shall tie this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down. And then you shall gather into your house your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your father's household. Then if anyone goes out of the doors of your house into the street, his blood shall be on his own head, and we shall be guiltless. If a hand is laid on anyone who is with you in the house, blood shall be on their head. And so anyway, the sign is that she puts a scarlet cord out the window, or in the window, okay? Why did they give her that sign? Take this, Passover. Okay, good. So they take this red thread and mark your buildings. Mark your building with it, right? Part of me wants to ask the question, like, this is more of just my shoving in interpretive question, but like, what if her neighbors were like, why are you doing that? Could the salvation be spread? Right? Just a question. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's true, but just the idea that, in the Passover, you have a whole community of people that the red which marks their door saves them from the destruction, from the judgment, right? And same thing with Rahab and all of her family. Rahab's house represents the Ark of Noah, right? Everyone pile in. The flood is coming. It represents the church. Everyone pile in. The red thread is on the door. The judgment is coming. Pretty cool, huh? It represents the container in which you are able to be preserved from the judgment, okay? And again, how amazing is it that she's a Gentile, right? She's a Canaanite. So again, it's one of these things where God is preserving not based off of merit, not based off of bloodline, not based off of ethnicity, not based off of what you do. He saves you based off of your faith, based off of your belief, willing to put your trust in him as a God who is just, as a God who is merciful. Again, that's how Hebrews will display it, that she had put her faith in the Most High, and therefore she was spared. The story of Rahab is remarkable in light of its context. It proves that the conquest was not about indiscriminate killing. Anyone who surrenders themselves in faith to the Lord will be saved, even a Canaanite cult prostitute who is a foremother of Jesus. So she's the cult prostitute in the city of Jericho, helper of the Israelite spies, spared by God because of her faith, one adopted into Israel along with her family, and the direct ancestor of Jesus, right? So her Passover, her house becomes emblematic of the church, a symbol of the church, the place in which you take refuge. Of course, as I said, She is within the Matthew 1 genealogy. Okay? And then here's that passage from Hebrews 11. By faith, the people passed the Red Sea as on dry land. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell, but the army had marched over them for 7 days. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. This story shows God's judgment, but it also shows his mercy. Rahab, though a pagan cult prostitute in a city devoted to destruction, is saved through her faith. Her offspring is a line of kings, which ends in the Messiah. Pretty dang cool. Yeah? It doesn't matter who you are, right? It doesn't matter where you come from. Okay, we are running out of time. Let's continue. We're going to go to chapter 6 now. So Jericho is going to be this first city that is devoted to destruction by the people of Israel, by God. I find it interesting that her house was in the wall. Did anyone take notice of that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, something to think about.
It's funny because the walls fell.
Yeah. Well, it could be a part of the wall fell. Yeah.
It just makes me imagine the whole
It helps. Yeah.
right. Like,
Yeah.
the walls fell, but like, wonder what was up with her.
Her place. That section just stands. That's pretty cool. Who knows?
Why did they say it was connected to the city then?
The wall? Her house? The idea is like you have. That's something interesting too, that it's placing her sort of like not in the center of the city, but like on the outside, right? She's already sort of on the outside, kind of like how Lot was sitting in the city gate, at the Sodom and Gomorrah story. So she's sort of already half removed from the people of Jericho. But yeah, her house being built sort of into the wall. Part of the infrastructure of her house is that city wall. Yeah, that barricade. Now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in. And Yahweh said to Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho into your hand with its king and mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all the men of war going around the city once. Thus you shall do for 6 days. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets." So for 7 consecutive days, for 6 of those days, you march around once. On the 7th day, you march around 7 times. Okay? And when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, you shall hear the sound of the trumpet, and all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat. And the people shall go up, everyone straight before him. So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priest and said to them, and he'll essentially tell them to do what they're going to do, and then it'll describe them doing it. Okay? So actually, let me just go down to where it says that they did it. Verse 12. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord, and the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord walked on, and they blew the trumpets continually. And the armed men were walking before them, and the rear guard was walking after the ark, while the trumpets blew continually. And the 2nd day they marched around the city once. It returned the camp, so they did for 6 days. On the 7th day they rose early at the dawn of day and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. It was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. At the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. And the city and all that was in it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid the messengers whom we sent. But you keep yourselves from the things devoted to destruction, lest when you have devoted them, you take from any of the devoted things and make the camp of Israel a thing for destruction and bring trouble upon it." That's an example of what I was talking about. Nazi Germany falls, don't claim the swastika for yourself, okay? Does that make sense, guys? That's my modern example, okay? Don't take the thing of destruction and let it become a part of you, okay? But all the silver and gold and every vessel of bronze and iron are holy to the Lord. They shall go into the treasury of the Lord. So the people shouted, and all the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell down flat, so that the people went into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. They devoted all in the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys, with the edge of the sword. But to the 2 men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, "Go into the prostitute's house and bring out from there the woman and all that belonged to her, as you swore to her. So the young men who had been spies and went in brought Rahab and her father and her mother and her brothers and all who belonged to her, and they brought her all her relatives and put them outside the camp of Israel. And they burned the city with fire and everything in it, only silver and gold, the vessels of bronze and iron, they brought into the treasury of the house of the Lord. But Rahab the prostitute and her father's household and all who belonged to her, Joshua saved alive. And she has lived in Israel to this day because she hid the messengers from Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. Okay, good? The fall of Jericho. So what's really cool, again, is that what is the point of this demonstration of the ram's horn and the shout? There's a great fortified city. How are you going to take it down? By following the command of the Lord and again, the idea is it's not really a military victory to begin with, right? It's a sign, it's a wonder that they blow the ram's horn and they shout and they bring forth, and then, it brings forth this victory. The idea is they're announcing the Lord's coming. What does the ram horn represent? It's a war horn, but it's a war horn that is blown when the king has entered the camp, right? When the king has come. When you coronate a king, you blow a shofar, okay? And then the shout as well is part of that announcing moment. God is here, okay? Why does Paul in 1 Thessalonians say that when Christ comes again, there's the blast of the shofar and the commanding shout of the archangel? He's thinking back to the fall of Jericho, that when God comes to judge the world, when the people of Israel come to judge, to be God's agents of judgment against Canaan, it's the shout and the trumpet. Are you guys ready to hear it? You guys been waiting? Okay, hopefully I don't screw this up. Okay, you guys ready? So, give you 200 of these and stand in a valley or something. That'll be pretty loud. That'll bring down the walls, okay? So anyway, this is from Jerusalem. This is what they blew, and that's what it sounded like. And probably, many, many others. Yeah. The idea is they brought down the house, okay? So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Bob might remember last year I just played the sound on YouTube, but
Eric, is that
I
yours?
like the live version.
you like the live version? Yes, yeah. That one's mine. Yeah. Pretty cool sounding, huh? Okay. I just wanted to bring that for fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. And then maybe I'll bring it again when we get to Revelation. So the fall of Jericho, right? Should resemble something else. The fall of Sodom and Gomorrah. The fall of Sodom and Gomorrah is almost an Abrahamic foretaste of what's about to happen. I want to show you, I took this photo. These hills right here, that's the ruins of Jericho. Right there. We didn't go up to it, but I was sitting in the bus and I turned and I snapped the photo, right? So that's where that happened. Those hills, it's just a bunch of dirt on top of ruins. Okay, it's called a tell. Go ahead.
Can I Google Maps Jericho?
Yeah, so there's a modern city of Jericho that we went to. We just didn't go to the ruins of the ancient version. Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, you can go into Jericho. Jericho is a city at the time of Jesus too. So this is the old city. You know what I mean? This is the city that was devoted to destruction. Okay, but then people settled around it and stuff like that. But
So there is a new Jericho in place of the old?
yeah, there's a Jericho present to this day. There's a city, people say, "Oh, where are you from?" Or send me some mail. I live in Jericho. Yeah, you can. Yeah. These are the ruins of the Jericho that we're talking about in the Bible, though.
And what country is it?
Well, it would be in the Palestinian section of the Promised Land area. Yeah. The West Bank. Yeah. Cool? Sound good, guys? So today, the ruins of Jericho, the ruins of the ancient Bronze Age Jericho, are known as Tel es Sultan. Interestingly, Jericho is known to be one of the oldest sites of human civilization, dating back as far as 10,000 years old. Isn't that weird also to think about? Like, Again, they knew that this was an ancient city. You know what I mean? And modern archaeology attests to that, the fact that it goes back to, 10,000 years ago. So pretty cool. I also want to bring in, just for a second, the Amarna letters that we talked about, or that was in the video. These are letters that were found in Egypt, sent to the Pharaoh from the people of Canaan at this time, basically saying, hey, we're being overrun. Come and help us. And the Pharaoh is probably thinking, you know what? I just got like hammered by these people, so I'm not going to help you. What are you talking about? Like, I know, listen, I can't help you here, okay? Like, he doesn't send help, clearly, because they overrun. They call them the Habiru. Remember that sort of has a resemblance to the word Hebrew. And for all intents and purposes, most people assume that the Habiru are the Hebrews, or that the Israelites are called Habiru. Habiru being a larger term for used by city folk to describe sort of those people who live out in the desert. So if you get sacked by bandits, you're getting you're getting overtaken by a Habiru. Okay? Does that make sense? Mercenaries, Habiru. Weird shepherds that live out in the desert, Habiru. Okay? The people who live on the fringes of society, they're the Habiru. Hey, these Habiru tribes and civilizations that lived out in the desert, they're coming to take us over now. It's really significant that you have like letters from these kings saying, hey, all the barbarians are at the gates. They're taking over, right? Again, it's from their perspective. From the perspective of the Bible, it's God bringing judgment upon these kingdoms. From their perspective, these crazy wilderness folk are coming and attacking us. Does that make sense? Cool.
You ever been in the Dead Sea?
Yes.
I heard that the salinity is so high that your buoyancy is.
Mm-hmm. Yep, just floating there. Yeah, nothing lives in there because it's so dead. So, but yeah, it kind of feels like you're floating in like space or something. I've never been in space, but I guess I'm just saying that like you don't have to do anything. You know what I mean? You just float. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Funny story. And guys, we're not going to finish today. We're going to have to carry over some stuff to next week, which is fine. I'll probably give an hour to JM and an hour to finishing what we have to finish today. I'll probably do a few more slides. But in the Dead Sea, what I was going to say is our hotel right by the Dead Sea, it had a pool. And I didn't know that the pool also, like, they made it like the salt of the Dead Sea, or the salt water of the Dead Sea. You're not supposed to dunk your head under. Okay? And I didn't know. Because you're like, don't dunk your head under the water of the Dead Sea. Like, that's terrible. But now I'm in the pool at the hotel, and I dug my head under. That was not fun. Just everything is burning. Everything. Yeah, not fun.
Because of the high salt content?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just burns everything. Yeah. My ears, my eyes. It just wasn't fun. No. But they have like international skincare conferences right there at that hotel that we were at, because it's like the skincare capital of the world is the Dead Sea because of like all the minerals and stuff. Yeah. So, what we have to get into now is the Giants stuff. Okay. But we don't have any time to do that. So do you guys want to finish early? Because I only got like halfway through. This meeting was supposed to be 2 meetings, but then because I was sick, we had to change it all up and stuff. So, yeah, I think I'll probably devote some time next time to do the giant stuff. And then I'll give that second half of the hour, and that's when we'll talk about the land generally. Does that sound good? Okay, cool. I'll leave it now open to questions and comments then, since oftentimes I don't get the chance to do that.
When is your friend coming?
JM next week. Yeah. So, at least that's the plan.
Should we bring some of those things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll send out in the next email, I'll send out a spreadsheet just to make sure. I have the list from last week. I have a photo of that list on my phone. But yeah, the 7 species, I just wanted to bring food. Like I said, I blew the trumpet here, and then I wanted also to bring some stuff just so you can guys get an embodied feeling of the land and stuff like that. Yes, that's next week. So any other questions, comments about what we talked about today? What do you guys think about this? These letters. No.
Very cool outside confirmation that,
Yeah.
as I said before, it's not just some story made up in the
Mhm.
Bible. These are actual events
Right.
that happen, and there's other accounts.
Mm-hmm. So I could talk a little bit more about this. Think about how it can really reframe your sense of how you think about the people of Israel. If you think about them in the context of, like, let's imagine you are a Canaanite. Let's imagine you're Rahab, right? Let's imagine you are one of these people that is sort of on the outside looking in, right? You're living entrenched in a society that you just think this is the way that the world is, right? And so when you have these people kind of coming, they you know that there's sort of those weirdos that live out in the desert, you know? And they have some weird practices, they have some weird rules, like they won't eat pig, right? Like what's that? Like you hear these rumors, you know? They don't eat pig and they, you know, and they don't have a bunch of gods and stuff like that. They're kind of off doing their own thing. And then they're also like there's other people that live out in the wilderness. Not all of them are like that. Some are just mercenaries. Some are just bandits. So, you know, people live out in the desert. That's why they're all called Habiru. Like if you Google Habiru, it's not just going to say, oh, the Israelites are the only Habiru. You know what I mean? It would say that the Israelites are considered to be among the greater group of people, class of people known as those desert dwellers, right? Those people that live out and sort of like they like to, you know, be on the outside. And then they come and they conquer, you know, and they come and they take out these old kingdoms. There's a lot of it really nuances the whole sort of idea that these people are a holy nation, a priestly nation from their perspective. You see what I'm saying? From the outside perspective, they're strangers, they're outsiders, right? They were slaves at one point, you know? Now they come and set up a kingdom that is going to be, that they say is going to be like the kingdom that actually rules the world. You know what I mean? It turns the system upside down, right? Why would slaves be our kings? And the broader sense of that is when you think about the idea of these like Habiru or something like that, think about the idea that God takes the weak things and exalts them. He takes the outsiders and exalts them, right? He takes the slaves and makes them rulers and princes, right? Like that idea is even embedded within just the historical context of even how other people would think it. And you're telling me these outsiders are going to, you know, reign, right? They're going to have a kingdom. And the thing is, they have always been considered outsiders. You know, the people of Israel, the Jewish nation. They throughout all of history, they've been considered outsiders. And that goes back even to the book of Joshua, you know? They live out in the wilderness. They're on the fringes, right? When you get to the Roman Empire, they won't worship our gods. They won't worship Venus and Jupiter, right? They only have their one god. They won't build a temple to Yahweh in, you know, Macedonia. They only have the one temple. They're just strange people, right? They're just weird. But it truly is their kingdom that took over the world, right? The kingdom of Jesus. The Davidic dynasty is a perpetual dynasty that continues to this day. Why else are we all in this room? We're all under a king. A dynasty that never ends exists because we're all here together. Allegiance to the king, you know, the Davidic king. I pledge allegiance to the Davidic king. So you see what I'm saying? That's sort of the incarnation happening there in real time. That God becomes man, right? And is embedded in real history. And again, the starting point is in one of these letters. Some scholars tend to think that there is actually a mention of the tribe of Judah in one of these letters. Yeah. So not just the Habiru, but also the tribe of Judah specifically is mentioned. That's pretty crazy. You know what I mean? Like real stuff, you know, that you could say, I'm part of that kingdom. We're all here today, a part of the kingdom, their kingdom that truly did take over the world. So
One of these times, like you had suggested before, I'd like to have like a meeting on the Trinity.
yeah, one of the meetings will do that, probably in the New Testament. We'll have a whole section devoted to the doctrine of the Trinity. Yeah, most likely one of the gospel meetings will probably talk about that. Good. We technically have 5 more minutes. What else do you guys want to talk about? I just didn't want to try to shove, the other like 50 slides into 10 minutes. So, what do you guys think? You guys want to break? We good? Okay. I know it was a lot. Sorry.
Just quickly back to Rahab.
Yeah.
In the story, the king of Jericho hears about the fact that Rahab's harboring
Yeah.
and why they're there.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody from the inside, somebody privy,
Yeah.
goes to the king, and then he sends representatives to her to say what's going on, bring them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then she lies to them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
So it's interesting that, and I thought about, like Anne Frank, I thought about
Of course.
kind of the situational ethics of,
As soon as you said she lied to them, I thought of the same thing. Yeah. Hiding Jews, hiding the Jewish nation. Yeah.
the name of a righteous thing
Right.
being dishonest.
Yeah.
And it just some of those little pieces
Yeah. What do we think about it?
that gets highlighted in the walk of faith, or the hall of faith.
Mm.
It's her faith.
Mhm.
Again, like Abraham saves her. It's not
Mm. Yeah.
the methodology of
Sure.
how she protected.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
Just interesting to me. I
Yeah.
don't. I mean, I would do it too. I would lie
Sure.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, when is it okay to lie and when is it not okay?
Yeah. That's a good question.
I thought it was interesting how they went to, Judgment, but just how they went to a house of a prostitute
Mm-hmm.
and how God used her
Mm.
in a sense.
Mhm.
It's like when I was reading it, it's like, wow.
I mean, imagine you're Rahab. You have no idea that people thousands of years later are going to be talking about you. You have no idea that your great 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 grandson is going to be a king of the universe, right? How God lifts up from the dirt and the dust, right?
Yeah.
Or
So-
that your Jewish men
Yeah.
who pick a woman to go to who happens to be a prostitute.
Sure.
I mean, how does that all?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions there. Yeah. Why did they go to Rahab? Yeah. I don't know. It's like if this was a movie, if this was a television show, you'd have a whole like 60 minutes to like try to show every step of that process. How do they run into Rahab? Rahab gets them hidden. Then then the king needs to find out and send people to go like knock on her door, the Gestapo, and then she needs to, like stuff.
Novel here, right?
Huh?
You can see a fictional novel, right?
Yeah, yeah.
With the backstory of it.
No, I know. You can literally flesh it all out and it would take forever to tell that story. So,
Something else I see about Rahab and her story connected to just us today in terms of looking at the kingdom of God and the coming of the kingdom of God, is that in her, perhaps in her life and her experience as a prostitute in this great kingdom, and you're living in the wall, you're so out of it, you're going to be the first to fall,
Right.
Things wrong, you're the first to go.
mm,
You're so low.
yeah.
And she's living under that kind of oppression, and then to hear about and see this other people
Right.
and how they have taken over. There's got to be something better than this.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of that, and I'm willing to lie, to do whatever, because I see a greater thing in them, and I want to go with that.
Yeah.
And that's where you go right back to God's kingdom is an upside down kingdom, and
Right.
the last will be first.
Absolutely.
Why that is such good news to her.
Right.
Right, that something is coming that's going to wipe out this crap. I want to be part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And thinking today, right? Why is the kingdom of God the good news?
Yeah.
Why is it the kingdom of good news? That kind of whole understanding of that's why she has faith in that, because look where you're
Yeah.
coming from.
Well, and she seems to know that these people were slaves, right? Yeah. If God lifted you up out of the pit, he can lift me up out of the pit. right?
Well, do we know much about Rahab? I mean, maybe she's the one who's supporting their family. Not that that's the way that you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know.
Yeah, maybe she's,
That's
yeah.
really what bothered
Well,
me.
her entire family gets preserved by, gets saved. Yeah.
As long as
By
they
her.
also trusted
Yeah.
to the next.
Yeah, exactly.
That-
Yeah. So that's really cool. I mean, the fractal nature of the Bible is amazing that we could talk about Rahab for probably another hour, you know. But what's cool, you really instigated probably what I'll wrap up is, the faith of Rahab. She displays the foresight and the faith to that, again, the hall of faith in Hebrews 11 says, in the same way that Abraham looked forward to the kingdom of God, so Rahab is looking forward to that, right? And the idea is this world is passing away. Why would you get behind the things that are going away? The stock market, it's going away, right? The United States, it started one day and it's going to end one day, The kingdoms are going to fall. And again, this is why I started with the whole Bronze Age collapse thing. The contextual frame of the story of Joshua is get with the people of the kingdom of God. That's the thing that lasts. The kingdom of eternity, the kingdom that will last, right? That kingdom is the ultimate sign of that kingdom that secures your knowledge that kingdom will come is the resurrection. The resurrection of Christ is the first fruits of that kingdom. And so with all of that to say, what we need to take from Rahab is God lifted these people up out of the dirt. He's bringing a new world. He's bringing a new kingdom. I want to be with them. Okay? Good?
Mhm.
And then he's an intentional God.
Yeah.
He intended for them to go there with her.
Yeah. You could say he orchestrated it so that we could be talking about it. Yeah.
I think we see the Father's heart towards women
Mm-hmm.
and women who are not esteemed
Yeah.
in that story.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, that same thing that we see in Jesus when he walks among women and honors them,
Yep.
and even has the woman that anoints him.
Mm-hmm.
who
Yeah.
is known to be.
Yeah. Promiscuous.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is the Father's heart that's shown way back in this story.
Yeah. It's real good.
The same, because I think we go, oh, look at God, he's evil and vindictive, he's this and that. No, he's just,
Mm-hmm.
fair, but he also from the beginning
Right.
has always looked at women
Yep.
in ways that the culture didn't.
Right. Totally.
So I love that.
He takes the lowest of the low and raises them up, turns their mourning into dancing, and we'll end there. Next time we'll talk about giants. And JM will come, and I'll send out that spreadsheet to. So I'll probably teach an hour, and then I'll give the floor over to him and to talk. Does that sound good, guys? Okay. Thank you, everyone.